play too much
Yeah,
sports.
yeah.
More so big
Okay.
time with my dad, and then of course
Yep.
she got real into it when my dad was a big sports guy, so she started to get into it too. So
Right.
yeah, she didn't really play anything though.
Yep. And then siblings. You
Yeah,
mentioned you
so I
had
got a younger
siblings.
brother. Yeah, I got a younger brother, a year younger
Okay.
actually. So yeah, he actually is trying
Cool.
right
Cool.
now to go play football again in college for Texas State. So he did have like
Oh wow.
ACL
All right.
MCL injury. Yeah, he had an ACL MCL tear last game in the playoffs of high school. He was a wideout, so that kind of set
Oh.
him back a long way. And then now that he's kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
fully
Oh,
recovered, he's been playing basketball and stuff like that. So he's gonna go try out to try to
we'll
walk
have to
on.
have him on too then.
Oh, for sure, man. He's got a crazy story.
Yeah.
We're much different though too, man. He's way
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
I'm a little more shorter, compact guy. You know what I mean? And he's like, I'm about 5'8". He's basically almost 6'1". Long, lanky limbs.
Oh wow. Okay.
Dude can jump and everything like that. Yeah. So we're two opposites, for sure.
All right. Yeah. So let's just keep rolling with that. So from your childhood, so you're really into sports, being competitive. What was that whole dynamic with your brother? I'm assuming I know I don't know personally because I have two
Oh,
sisters, but having another brother around, I'm assuming that creates that competitive environment for sure.
oh, big time, man. I mean, it's awesome. We used to get into it like here and there all the time, especially like even it was backyard playing in the hoop outside and all that kind of stuff. We would get we're
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very both extremely competitive guys. So, and then our dad would get involved too when we were
Yeah.
younger.
Yeah.
We'd play like, you know, 1v1v1 outside and like it'd be stupid competitive, like even with my dad. So it was fun, and that pushed us for sure, like
That's
me and my
funny.
brother all the time.
Yeah, I feel like that's such an important aspect of like being, having a childhood that, yeah, you're doing fun things, but also an environment that you're in that allows you to like to grow, right? Especially for athletes
Oh,
and
for sure, yeah.
ultimately for what you are today, like that childhood definitely played a role in getting you to where you are today for sure.
Majorly, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So yeah, keep rolling from there. So after that, I guess we'll take it up to high school now at this point. So, did you grow up in Texas?
Yeah, so I've always grown up in San Antonio, Texas. So my dad's from and his
Okay.
family's from Missouri originally. So we'll go up there a few times, sometimes go see some different family and stuff. They're kind of spread out all over the place. They're all military, so they all came down here and now they're all, living wherever they're at. So but we'll all go to Missouri sometimes here and there, but me and my
Right.
brother have grown up San Antonio our whole life. So yeah, Texas born and raised for sure.
That's awesome. So, in high school, so I guess what were you playing in high school? What sports did you play?
So from high school, I actually just kind of just stuck with football basically. I was a quarterback and not the
Yep.
tallest quarterback at the time. You know, usually 6 foot and up, but I was pretty good. I've always played quarterback my whole life, so I really understood the game and all that kind of stuff. So I was very good as far as like, situation management, leading and all that kind of stuff was, a big part of, what I knew. So I still play quarterback. I had a quarterback trainer, all that kind of stuff. So I just stuck real hard with that. And the goal at that time, basically was to try to go play college football. That was like my major goal at that point. So I played high school all throughout, played football, played varsity, all that good stuff. Um, Ended up, actually having like some kind of quarterback battle a few years, into like my senior and junior year that kind of, did put a big competitive edge on me too as well. That pushed me a lot. And then as far as from there, just going to different camps and all that kind of stuff just to get looked at. Because I did come from, I guess you could say a smaller high school. It was an all boys Catholic school here in San Antonio, Texas. So, as far as recruiting and all that kind of stuff, getting your name out there was for sure a little bit, more tough than you would say, a big, huge public school down here in Texas. But yeah, I mean, football. I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
sure y'all know like
Football's huge
football here
down
in
there.
Texas, it's enormous, man. Like our stadium and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It was an old school kind of very old school stadium, but like our student section was called like Section R, like Section Rowdy, I think was what it was named after. But yeah, it was intense, man. It was crazy. It's kind of near downtown San Antonio, so you would even get
Yeah. I
people
mean,
like living around there, just the little housing and stuff like that. They could see the games and the stadium over where they're at, their backyard. You get everybody around there, man. It was like such an awesome kind of environment on Friday nights.
Yeah, I feel like the high school football down there is like borderline similar to college football. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
I would
In terms
definitely
of
say, yeah.
audience and whatnot.
Oh, you got some stadiums that
Yeah.
are basically bigger than some small colleges out here in Texas, like for sure,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
nuts.
which is it's
Yeah, it's
insane.
crazy.
Yeah,
So
it's
when did
it's it's awesome.
yeah, so when did you kind of shift away from football? So if your goal was to play college football, when did that kind of change to wanting to move it elsewhere?
So I mean, basically after high school was finished, I just had a job at this local kind of barbecue restaurant, where I would work after football was completely done. So I was still kind of training and trying to, film and stuff. Didn't really work out the way I guess I wanted to. I was like pretty hard on myself. I could have probably tried maybe JUCO and stuff like that if I really wanted to. But at that point, my main goal was like Division 1, Division 2, Division 3 type football. That's what I really, really wanted to do. But since, that wasn't really working out, and as far as life was going and stuff like that, um, just I was just ended up just working. And honestly, just football started kind of taking off on the back burner, I guess, as far as like a passion. So then after that, just worked. To be honest, I got a little bit chubby after like football was completely over, just because I wasn't doing anything but working and eating that little like leftover brisket at that restaurant all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
time. So yeah, it wasn't a good thing, but I was making good money and stuff like that as far as like after high school. So that was like more of my focus. And then my girlfriend is actually more of the not sporty, but she was the first one to kind of get me into the gym. 'Cause she would always go and do, cardio, run, whatever she was doing. Not really weight training, but she was always at the gym after high school and stuff like that. So
Right.
she
Did you
was
guys
like,
meet in high school or?
yeah. So we've been dating since freshman year. So we're like kind of high school sweethearts. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah. So I've been with her
Yeah,
for
yeah.
about
There you go.
7 years so
Yeah, I
far.
know. Wow, wow. That's awesome. So after high school, I mean, so you're 22, right? So you're
Yeah.
pretty much. So when did you graduate high school?
2018.
2018. So when did the bodybuilding really take route?
So basically, like right after that. So once, high school basically, and then I actually graduated. Um, I started kind of. I was like, what, she kind of got me into the gym with her. So she was like, why don't you come to the gym with me? Just that's where we'll hang out. We'll just spend our time there, see if you like it. And then like literally at day one, I was kind of doing more of like a fat loss journey at that time. Didn't really know what I was doing, just cutting calories like a madman, and doing a shit ton of cardio. All that stuff that you do when you first go into the gym, trying to
Yeah.
lift heavy weight, all that crazy stuff. So, I mean, I did that, and like immediately day one, man, I fell in love with it, like beyond the passion that I had for even football, which I thought was like kind of the biggest love of my life I would ever have. You know what I mean, as far as sports and competition. So that
Yep.
like took hold of me like immediately. That's when I knew. I was like, yeah, I really like this kind of stuff. And then I followed a lot of YouTube, bodybuilders on YouTube as far as competitive guys. So that's where I kind of got the motivation to actually compete. So once I kind of lost that weight, I could see that like my body actually changed very, very quickly. As far as like once I dropped that weight, starting to put on muscle. And I was like, I was kind of thought to myself, even my girlfriend, a lot of friends, they were like, you could really do something, as far as like what we're seeing with you, you know, doing the bodybuilding stuff, like your body and your genetics, are pretty good as far as like taking it a good length. So that's when I was like, you know what, I'm gonna full force into it, kind of go into the competitive side of things and like, for fun, obviously the first show, see how I do. And so I did that, did the whole process with the first coach that I had. He's a local coach down here in San Antonio. So that was my very first coach. Did that in 2019 was my first show. So I did men's physique,
So
Division 10 that
how
time.
was the lead up to that in terms of like prepping for it and like obviously
Oh,
it's
it was
different than just training, right? Like you're training for
oh
an
big
event, an
time.
actual show.
Yeah, I mean, I was like very, very into bodybuilding as far as just everything, diet, nutrition, training. So I was getting most of my knowledge just from like, as far as just YouTubers and stuff like that, different IFBB pros, professional bodybuilders and stuff on YouTube. So I would really, really study kind of what they did, almost like, you going into game film and stuff like that as far as playing sports. Like that's how I took, bodybuilding even at that like early start. So once I knew I was going to go into that side of things, I kind of just saw what they did. I was very structured and very like strict on myself even before I had a coach and everything like that. I was still trying to, eat 5, 6 meals a day, It wasn't perfect, but I was trying to, see as far as what my body needed, as far as calories, protein, everything like that. So I did do that. And then after that, I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna jump into it fully, then might as well go with the coach and, do the whole thing. Have him guide me and,
So what was that?
see me in
Yeah,
person,
what was
everything
that
like that.
dynamic like in terms of
Uh,
having a coach versus just training on your own?
for me personally, man, it was basically the best thing that like I've ever done, to be honest, is just for me, I'm very kind of like militant as far as like you tell me what to do, I'm gonna do it. Like, if I have a coach, you tell me to do this, I'm just gonna straight up do it. No questions asked. You know what I mean? That's the type of guy I am, and I really like love structure just in daily basis. So once like literally I would just have him, you send in your check-in photos, kind of see how you're looking. He'll send the diet based off of that, training program, whatever it may be. And then it was so easy for me because it's just like you send me that, I'm gonna do it. That's it. You send me to change this food or whatever, this carb, I'm gonna do it. So it made life so much easier instead of having like, to play that guessing game by yourself. Because these guys, these coaches know exactly, what they're doing as far as like, changing physiques and stuff like that. So I would say it was
Right,
like a
right.
great experience, yeah.
Awesome. And then I guess so let's walk through the first event because I think
Hmm.
the first times for everything are a pretty not just a special moment for yourself personally, but also a huge learning experience. So for your first event, what was kind of the shock or the surprise that was involved with it in terms of what you were expecting versus what you got versus how you performed and how well it went?
So for sure, I would say the biggest because this was in 2020. I had started prep around February. I would say mid to late February is when I first started for the first show, the full prep. And so I would say the biggest thing was COVID. So COVID threw an enormous wrench in
Yeah.
that, in like entire prep, man. I had just went on vacation with my girlfriend and my family to New Orleans like right before I started prep just to get all the fun stuff out of the way. And then that was kind of like when you were starting to hear about COVID. So then we came back and it was like full
Yeah.
force, lockdowns, everything like that. And I had just started prep, right? So I was like, man, that's when already shows were getting like, basically postponed left and right. We had picked out like probably 15, 20 different shows to try to do. And just like literally, so I started prep, lockdowns happened. I ended up buying a lot of equipment just from, garage sales, whatever it may be, all over the internet, just
Mhm.
whoever was selling whatever I can get my hands on at that point. Because like once I got in it, as far as prep, I was like, no, I'm not gonna get out of it. I'm gonna see it all the way through. So I just dieted that whole way, and I would say that was the biggest thing that pretty much showed me, if I can stay strict on myself and pretty much prep with no gym, you know, very limited sources as far as food and stuff like that because of the pandemic too. As far as going to the grocery store and stuff like that, stuff being limited. If I could prep through all of that, and then at the end of the day, still go on stage and do everything like that and kind of get a crazy good result for as far as my first show, that was the biggest turning point for me. That's when I was like, if I can prep through all this BS and I can basically do whatever. That's what kind of pushed me, for all the rest of the shows. That was a big turning point for sure.
Right, right. And like even so just talk a little bit about COVID. Especially for bodybuilders, powerlifters, people who are reliant upon access to gyms. That was an interesting time because it's a first for everybody. Like nobody's ever really been through that. So being able to kind of adapt to the situation and be able to find a way to succeed regardless of the situation that you're in, I feel like that was a prime example of that. I
For
mean,
sure.
I can only imagine because I mean for us, so Dylan and I are both hockey players, so the rinks were all closed down and that was a whole different story. But the gym is one of those things, like you were saying, you were buying stuff off of, wherever, whoever was selling it. That stuff was like gold at the time,
Oh,
like
dude, it
everything,
was
they're jacking the
people were
prices up
racking
just
up
because nobody
prices
can get their hands on
left and
anything.
right. For sure. Yeah, there was barbells
Yep.
and stuff like that. They were selling for like 200 plus. And I was like, damn, man. Trying to find something
Yeah.
for like around 100 and below was like, you found gold if somebody was
Yeah.
willing to give it up for that at that time. So, yeah, I get it
Yeah.
for sure.
So after your first event, let's go into the changes that you made. So I think did you say that you changed coaches after your first event, or at what point did you change coaches?
Yeah, so I did my first show. I did actually a different division too. I started on the men's physique division, so that's I don't know if y'all are too familiar like the different divisions of
Okay.
bodybuilding, but those are the guys if you ever seen them with the board shorts, the big long swim trunks kind of thing.
Yep. Yep.
The beach body type. So that's what I started out in. So
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
the first coach with me for that. So it was cool, man. That's kind of the only thing I knew because a lot of the guys that I watched on YouTube were more so that division too, kind of more of the influencer type, I guess you could say. We're doing that division, so that was
Right.
kind of the more popular thing to do, and that's kind of the starting point as far as bodybuilding goes. So that's where I was like, you know what, if I'm gonna jump in, I'm not gonna jump into fully, going up where I shouldn't be. I should be right here and start there, and then kind of go forward. So I did that with him. Did our first show. Thank God it ended up happening.
Let's take it up to. I know you mentioned in 2021. Unless you have anything you want to talk about between then and your the time in 2020 when you went to that next event. But you said you got third callouts. So first of all, you're gonna have to explain a little bit because
the
I don't
the
really
whole
understand
terminology and
the
stuff,
lingo
right?
or anything like that. Yeah.
So basically, I made that coaching switch after doing an off season with that last coach, which was my very first coach, right?
Yep.
So I was actually still in prep with him. So I was about 8 weeks out, the direction that things were going as far as like my body and stuff like that, that I kind of knew my body to a certain point at that extent already by doing that, for as long as I did. So I knew it just wasn't the direction. I wouldn't get the look that I was trying to achieve, especially trying to go pro at that point. So, I made that decision, kind of took it back a little bit, did a little bit of time of actually just kind of like a health phase, you could say, just coming off because of prep's very tedious and pretty hard on your body, just the whole diet, everything like that. So came off of that, got pretty healthy, make sure blood work, all that was good. So everything was good with that new coach. We started back up. Uh, everything kind of we went pretty well, I could say. Um, as far as he was a very much so different approach to what I was used to, a little bit more, strategic and stuff like that. So I did, and he was actually at the time, very well put as far as being a pro in the men's physique division. So that's what kind of led me to join up with him because that's what I was still doing. So, I was like, might as well learn from somebody that's there. So I did that. Ended up going to Pittsburgh and did my first national show, which was North Americans over there. And I mean, as far as from touching down, it's just yeah, as far as like how much the body can change, it is crazy, especially at that time when you're that lean, and certain little variables that throw off your entire physique. So got down, touchdown in Pittsburgh from San Antonio. Me and my girl got in there. I sent pictures over to my coach. Was looking pretty good. And then from there, it's just as far as like the whole peaking process, which is kind of what we call it, as far as like you peak for a show. So there's certain things as far as like, bringing back carbs into the system slowly, kind of doing different stuff as far as posing, trying to get the body harder and denser and drier and also fuller to fill out the muscle because you're so depleted because you're going low to no carb and all that cardio and stuff like that. So during that process, it's just kind of, day by day, stuff wasn't going as good. And I already kind of knew it, I knew kind of what the end result would be, sadly. But we were already there, might as well just go for it. So we went up there and, I just didn't get the look I was looking for. I was very, you know, holding a lot of water retention, for sure. And then just very, very, we call it like spilled over, as far as when you pretty much ingest too many carbs, at a certain amount of time that then your body could handle. So your body doesn't like literally soaks them up and you kind of turn into like a water buffalo. So it doesn't make you don't get tighter or drier or anything that you want. So that's what I always say. I was
Yeah.
like, man, that show I look like a water buffalo, man. So it wasn't the best look. Ended up getting third call out. So there's actually, depending on how many guys are at that show, with it being a national show, there's a lot of guys. So first call out would be like kind of that top 10 spot. So that would be like, for it could be first through seventh, depending however big the call outs would be, whatever the judge wants to do. He can call out five guys, he can call out seven, he can call out three, six. It doesn't really matter. So I was actually basically in the very last call out that he did. But I was in the middle, so I was like, hey, I'm in the middle of third call
Yeah.
out. That was my little joke to everybody. But yeah, so basically that was a very very bad like indention on me for sure. Like I felt basically like crap after that. You know what I mean? Like I remember literally after prejudging, which is the morning show, that's basically kind of when the show's decided in bodybuilding. So if you're like first call out, dead center, because there's a dead center box as far as like being on the stage. If you're getting looked at that dead center, then you kind of know you're looking at a top two spot. You know what I mean? Something like that, top three. So if you got third call outs, you know, you're already done. And then at that particular national show, when you get third call outs, you're basically in the back of the pack. At the end, when you come in back for finals, you know, the 5, 6 hours later, you're just gonna basically they call your name and you walk up on stage. You kind of just walk off, give them like a little smile and a wave, and you just walk back out, and that's it. I don't even think I got a medal or anything like that either. So that like I remember prejudging right
Damn.
after that. My family went to go watch, so my dad and my mom were there, and then my girlfriend was also there too. And I didn't have my coach over there either because he had just got COVID before. Um, you know, we flew out there. So that kind of sucked too because it was my first time. I was nervous, everything like that. So yeah, I remember prejudging. We went back to the hotel, man, and I just like had so much emotion. Like I legit remember just like breaking down in like tears for sure. Like that was kind of one of the roughest like moments of like even like you know football career, baseball, basketball, like just ever. You know, as far as like I guess you could say sports career. That was like the roughest moment that I felt. You know, probably ever. So that's like the biggest thing that I do remember is like that moment in there with my girlfriend, just like basically hugging her and kind of feeling to myself like, man, was this even worth it? You know, because it does take a lot of money to fly over there, get the hotel, you know, all that kind of stuff, and just bodybuilding in general is not cheap. So, you know, it did kind of leave, you know, makes you think a little bit like, man, should I keep going? So, you know, that was a big thing for sure.
For sure. And you talk about that mentality and that mindset. Like that's a tough spot to be in. So what was, how did you bounce back and how did you kind of pick yourself up and move forward and what kept you motivated to keep coming back? And, like you said, is it even worth it? And obviously the answer was yes. And, how did you come to that conclusion and move on and get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I mean, just like you were saying, like mentality is probably the biggest thing that somebody can have. Because I mean, at the end of the day, motivation won't always be there. You know, just like what happened, you know, to me or other people, you know, you may have a moment where you lose all motivation. You know, I even have days right now, you know, where
Mm.
I don't feel the best to go to the gym. You know, I don't feel the best to actually, you know, eat those 7, 6 meals a day. You know, there's days like that. I mean, I love the sport, I love everything about it, but motivation's not always there for, you know, I don't care if you talk to any athlete. You know, I've heard everybody say it, you know, the best of the best. But that's at the end of the day, that mentality and that discipline is what takes you the furthest. I think that's like, you know, true and true for sure. That's the biggest thing. So, you know, basically I kind of like told myself, you know, stop bitching, you know, stop complaining. It already happened. You know, this, and at the end of the day, that was my first national show ever, basically my second show ever too. So, you know, I was only 21 at the time. You know, I never made any excuses on that. Like, oh, this is my age, this is that, this is my second show, just because that's how I am on myself. That's how I was raised up. You know, doesn't matter what age and like, you know, how new you are to a sport. Like, you know, I knew what I was capable of and stuff like that. So, you know, immediately I talked to that biggest thing was like talking to my girlfriend. My girlfriend knew like, you know, this is just one step along the journey. You know, it's not going to be a straight shot. You know, there's no such thing as that. You know, some people do are lucky enough, but you know, the majority of people there won't be a straight shot to like the top. So, you know, I picked myself up, you know, kind of made the most out of it. Um, just enjoyed that night after, you know, we were able to kind of pig out. So that made it a little bit more, you know, worth it, kind of cheered me up a little bit. Because I'm a foodie, man. My girlfriend and I were foodies, so you know, that helped a lot. Just kind of sat there, you know, just recollected and that night, man, I just like had never I would say the biggest mentality was like I've never had kind of a mental switch flip just like that. You know, I went from kind of, you know, being sad, being discouraged, all that kind of stuff, and then immediately like that night when I just started talking to her, you know, we were just kind of just sitting there talking for a long time, and I knew what I can do and she knew what I can do, and a lot of people knew like what I could do with my physique as far as like what I'm gifted, genetically, all that stuff. So that's when I was like, I had that the craziest drive to like just get better and go into like as far as like changing my physique in the off season, as far as putting on muscle and stuff like that. I was like more motivated probably than I ever have. So that's where I kind of, you know, I really believe that like losses truly, you know, they do turn into wins because if you're really about it and you're really in love with that sport, you have that discipline, you have that mentality. Um, Basically like that underdog, that underdog mentality for sure. You're gonna go extremely far, and that loss is gonna, you know, some people are gonna be pretty damn afraid of like man, that guy shouldn't have lost because he's gonna turn into a different animal, and that's like basically kind of what happened to me. So
Yeah, yeah, no, that's. I mean, so you touched on one thing that I want to kind of dive deeper in, and one thing that you kind of hear across all successful people, whether it's athletes, businessmen, um, and that is the environment that you surround yourself with, whether it's people or the people you're training with, whatever it might be. So you mentioned that your girlfriend was pretty instrumental in helping you get past these certain points. So if you could touch a little bit on um, how the environment has kind of shaped who you are today, and being able to push past those barriers and the failures.
oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, biggest thing like I always say, like she's my rock, my girlfriend. She's like definitely my rock. I don't have anybody like even, family's always extremely supportive. I'm blessed with a great family. Her family as well, basically is my family. So they're extremely supportive as well. But like there is probably nobody in my life that is as supportive of her or of me that than she is. So like she basically whatever I'm doing, like she's gonna be straight up honest, which I'm glad to. So she's gonna be straight up honest with me. She knows like as far as like how we can go with it and stuff like that. She's gonna tell me straight up. She's not gonna sugarcoat things. And then like no matter what I am doing, whether it's a job, whether it's if I wanted to randomly eat 5 burgers and I'm saying, hey, I'm gonna eat 5 burgers right now, she's gonna like start screaming at me to do it. She's gonna tell me that I can do it and all that kind of stuff. So she's funny, man. She's extremely supportive and she's like definitely, I do love it that she is very, very honest with me too. Uh, because we can talk back and forth like very seriously as far as different things. So she'll never kind of steer me in a direction that I know maybe I can't go and stuff like that. She'll always be very upfront. So I would say, yeah, for sure. I mean, having her in my corner, and then having supportive family and stuff like that is can definitely shape like any person's, career or whatever they're doing. Because if you don't have that environment, whether you truly love the sport that you're doing or truly love your life, whatever you're doing at that moment, it is hard, man. You have those like you don't have anybody in your corner, so you don't get that little push and that little kind of love that you're looking for, as far as giving you more motivation to keep going and going and going. So when you have somebody, like a Maddie that I have and stuff like that, I feel like I couldn't be where I'm at or even go further than where I'm trying to go without somebody like her. So, I would say having people like that in your corner is like an extreme blessing. So if you can find them, like keep them because they're gonna help you big time along the way.
Sure, and that's one thing we've talked about before too, is just surrounding yourself with the right people, and whether it's like you said, a girlfriend, a training partner, someone that pushes you, someone to keep you accountable. You're not always going to be the most disciplined person on your own. It's hard to be, and like you said, you're not always going to be motivated to go to the gym, stick to your diet, get the right amount of sleep. So surrounding yourself with those people that can keep you honest with yourself and hold you accountable makes all the difference in the world.
For sure, man.
Yeah, so I guess from that point on, what was next after that? After that show?
So after that show, actually at that same show, man, I had my coach, my current coach was actually there. So I have like one of my best friends, his name's David. So he was actually at that same show as me with that coach. And, the whole time he was like, man, I got his name's Dino, my current coach, Dino Estrada. So he's like, man, Dino can see like what he can do. He's an extremely good coach. He's like, he can see what he can do with you. He's willing to work with you like right now. And I was mid prep with the other coach. So I was like, man, I'm not just gonna turn my back on him and and just flip flop again. I just flip flop from a past coach. I'm not gonna be known as like the little flip flopper, just randomly dissing coaches. So I've always been a guy like to truly see things through. So I'm not, I'm very as far as being with somebody and being with a coach, I'm gonna see it all the way through. I'm not just gonna like dip at a certain point. So even if it's going negative, I'm already in it, so I'm gonna see it through. So he was at that show anyway, so we ended up linking up. I kind of already knew the direction that I was gonna go with him, because I saw my friend David. I've seen what he does with different athletes, and they get this kind of as far as bodybuilding goes, we call it like the conditioning. So as far as like, that beyond peeled out of your mind type of look, that he can put people in on stage no matter what they look like in the off season, how chubby they are when they start their prep. He can do a lot of great things. I haven't seen anybody do the kind of things that he does, like in the amount of time he does. So I already knew the direction I was going, so talked with him, came back to San Antonio, kind of enjoyed a little bit of like downtime. Kind of didn't really go to the gym for about, 4 or 5 days to a week. Just settled down, kind of ate, hang out with family, hung out with my girlfriend a lot, just did different stuff. So then after that, that's when I fully knew, me and my girlfriend kind of talked it over too, and I talked with my friend David, so fully jumped into that with Dino, and then the rest is history, man. That's kind of when I started the first kind of true off season, I guess you could say, like kind of bulking time period with him, which I believe, anybody out there listening that's gonna try to hire a coach and maybe do a show and stuff like that, I would definitely say if you can get with the coach before you actually start that show and kind of go into like an improvement season with him as far as putting on size, trying to change your physique, put on a little bit of muscle so he can see how your body works and stuff like that first, that's gonna change everything as far as how the prep goes. So, anybody that does want to do that is kind of a little piece of like a tip of advice I could say. Would try to get with a coach early and do that. But so basically, yeah, we started our growing season and we grew a lot, like a good amount in that short time period. I would say about 5 to 6 months of a true, fully, up the food, up the training, going crazy hard every single day, getting up to like them 7 meals a day type of stuff. So yeah, it went like basically perfect to
Damn. How
plan,
much
man.
how much did you gain?
So I went from, I believe I was 185 on stage with that last coach. So I went from that and I got up to around 223 to 225 fasted in the morning. So that was by far my heaviest weight that I've ever been. And then so yeah, it went
Yeah,
perfect.
that's a huge difference.
Wasn't really I always used to be, with different coaches you see different stuff. So, past coaches I've been kind of, chubbier or holding a little bit more water, stuff like that at certain points during an off season at certain weights. But yeah, I was like looking better at 222, 225 as far as conditioning goes, than I have like even at 210 or 215 with other coaches in the past. So it was a huge,
Wow.
probably for sure one of the best off seasons I had besides this last one that's going on right now.
And,
For sure.
and that makes such a difference too. That's crazy. Talk about 10, 15 pounds doesn't sound like much, but when it's conditioned like that, it makes a world of difference in the appearance of the physique.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, especially now in the social media age, a lot of people do get stuck on appearance. That's everybody. I mean, I'm included. I get stuck on, trying to be lean or am I lean enough to post this picture? Are my abs popping enough in this picture? Am I big enough in this picture? So, I mean, it happens to everybody. So I think that's a big thing right now in bodybuilding too. A lot of people aren't willing to kind of push their body and push their body fat up, even just a smidge, that you need to put on that, type of muscle that you're going to see a change on stage. It's just like different athletes with different sports, man. A lot of, people get comfortable, whether you're a good athlete already in that sport. Some people do get comfortable and they don't want to take an off season. They don't want to try to improve, because they kind of think they're there already. But, if you're not that guy getting up at 6 a.m., there's another guy getting up at like 5 a.m. already every single morning that's going to beat you out. So that's how I always look at it, and that kind of keeps me motivated all the time for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So we always talk about mindset too, and how you can separate yourself from your competitors. And I know myself personally, a lot of people can relate to this, where um, you always go that extra mile, that extra rep, that extra set, get up just an hour earlier or whatever it might be. So how do you kind of and another thing too we talk about is balance. So we had an interview earlier today where we were talking about balance and kind of the balance between pushing yourself past your limit of like almost like burning out, and then just kind of not being too laid back in your training. So how have you kind of struck a balance with training and not pushing too far past the point of, I guess, no return for burnout?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, especially bodybuilding too, a big thing is like recovery. So there is you do have to go balls to the wall type training every single day to kind of see changes that we're trying to look for as far as like the extremes of professional bodybuilding, stuff like that, or just competing in general. But at the end of the day, it is big time recovery. So if you're not recovering, you're not growing, you're not repairing, everything's going to be tight. All the muscle and stuff aren't going to work the way they should. So like, there is a certain breaking point as far as, are you, as far, I guess you can say in the overtraining side of things, that's kind of with every sport. There is a point to where you may just push too hard over the limits than what you're supposed to. And that's when a lot of people do end up losing motivation and stuff like that too, man, just because they're literally burnt out. They can't push that same every single day forward. So, I mean, for me, as far as that side of things, I would definitely say, it's always been like a big thing. Like I'm very hard on myself as far as training every day. I like to, push myself to the limit. That's just kind of me. I feel like I need to feel, that kind of good soreness and stuff like that I accomplished what I needed to that day. I felt like I pushed my body to its like breaking point. That's the way I like to train. That's how I do it. But it's still to the extent for me that I know I can recover and I can do that day in and day out. And the big thing is like if you want to do that, you do have to make sure your eating's on point. You got to make sure recovery's on point. You're sleeping enough. You're hydrated. All that different type of stuff. So you can't just, everybody loves the training. That's the fun part for basically all of us. Whether it's hockey, football, the training is the funnest part, man. I'll go in there and train every single day. I'll stay in there for 24 hours if I could, training that whole day. But after that and before that, leading up to training or practice, that's the thing that kind of defines athletes for sure. Because like, are you willing to stay on your regimen during kind of the shitty part? Are you willing to stay on when it's not going to be the most fun part of training and putting in the work? Like the real work kind of starts like from when you wake up to when you go to bed. That's the actual work. So.
Right. And so I guess while we're on this topic of regimen and eating and training, what is a typical day of, I guess we'll go with the off season. What does a typical day look like for you from a training aspect and also like an eating aspect? When are you eating and how many meals are you eating, calories, whatnot?
So basically, as far as calories and like macros, I don't really track or know, to be honest. My coach does everything for me as far as that. He won't really send calories or macros. It's just, meal 1 through 6, you're eating this. And I'm just like, yes, sir. So that's kind of how I operate. So I really don't know my calories and stuff like that. They're up there though, especially in off season, they're up there. But so like a typical day, I would wake up around 7:30 a.m. basically right now in the off season. I'll do fasted cardio. I have a little stationary bike at the house, so I'll put on a podcast actually, put on a podcast, kind of watch that on the big TV
Oh
and
yeah.
just kind of bike for about 20 minutes and stuff like that. So that's what I've been doing. I'll do that first thing in the morning, make my breakfast, which is like the meal one. For me, that's like my favorite. So that's like a little bit of cream of wheat right now, eggs. There's steak in there, and then there's a little bit of peanut butter, and then also a little bit of blueberries and fruits like that. So I'll do that. Take all my supplements, as far as vitamins, liver care, kidney care, all that crazy stuff, EAAs, everything like that. So I'll rest. Usually I'll take a nap. That's all we do, bodybuilders, is nap, right? So I'll do that, take a nap real quick. Meal two usually is when is like my pre-training meal. So I like to at least have about 2 to 3 meals. Usually two is like the sweet spot. So I'll do meal two, go ahead and go train about an hour later, let it digest for about an hour and then go train. Uh, Basically I'll train for about an hour and a half if I'm training with my friend. That little bit of bullshit at the end talking usually leads up to the hour and a half with the posing and all that kind of stuff. So I would say train for about an hour and a half. Do a little bit of abs for sure because that's something that I genetically need to improve on. So I would say that's a huge thing right now in the off season is just trying to improve my core. As far as everything else, but so I'll do that. Get home. Either probably usually it's go to my girlfriend's house. If I'm being honest, it's not go home. It's go to my girlfriend's house. Got all my meals and stuff in this little bag. So I got all those ready on deck. So I'll eat meal three, which is the post workout meal. Usually I'm getting about 1 to 2 cheat meals, I guess, post workout that you could say a week. So it just depends, if the girlfriend wants. Usually it's one if I'm being the one to go out, but if it's two, it's my girl saying, "Hey, let's go have dinner." So that's usually when I go to two. So yeah, I'm sure y'all already know. Yeah, she girls like to go out and eat and stuff like that. So it'll be movie and dinner, whatever it may be. Or usually we're just like couch potatoes, man. We just sit in the house and just chill, us and the dog. So that's basically all we do. So we'll do that, and then after that, meal four, a couple hours later, probably about 2.5 hours later. Meal five, about 2.5 hours later, and then meal six, about an hour to an hour and a half later. Just because it's just a shake and some fruit, usually like an apple or a banana. So then basically I try to get at least 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep a day is what I aim for. So take all, whatever the nighttime supplements is, and then depending on how the day goes, maybe a little bit of melatonin just to knock out. And that's kind of it, man. That's basically
Yeah.
the day right there. Nothing exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, I feel like that's bodybuilding, right? It's a very tedious
Exactly, man.
industry,
Yeah.
tedious sport where it's redundant, right? Like you're doing the same stuff over and over and over again. And honestly, whoever does
Mhm.
it the best and stays disciplined the most, they end up being the best bodybuilders. So
That's all it is. Yeah. Whoever can stick to their regimen day in and day out more than the other guys is basically going to come out on top. So it's a very
yeah,
militant
yeah.
type of sport, you could say, man.
I mean, I'm sure you follow like Machiavelli Motivation on Instagram.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so like those, I feel like most of the videos are guys like prepping their meals, like cooking eggs or like making their chicken. Like it's just like,
Same
that there's a
over and over
concept
and
behind
over.
bodybuilding. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it's definitely like it's very strategic too, for sure. Like a lot of people think it's just, you eat your chicken or rice and that's it. And, go to the gym, do whatever you want, and you're gonna blow up, right? Or take this and take that and you blow up.
right,
I mean, it is very, very, very strategic as far as like when you have a coach, when you're competing, certain carbs for certain times of the day, certain proteins, as far as ounces and stuff like that, person to person. Because I mean, that's the biggest thing as far as bodybuilding goes. That's why I really fell in love with it. I've always been a part of like a team sport, and like kind of leading the team and being a part of a team. But bodybuilding, man, like even with your coach and you have your corner, you have your people around you, but it's basically you and that person in the mirror every single day. So it's basically like how much can I push? How can I beat that guy, the next day? And then you see that guy, how can I beat that guy the next day and the next day? So that's kind of like my favorite part. It's all on you. So if you can't do it and you don't want to stay with it, then you're gonna not see the result at the end that you want. So
right. So I guess we're pretty much up to date at this point. So what's next for you? What show are you prepping for, or in what phase of your training are you in right now?
so right now, I'm still kind of like in the middle, I guess you could say, of off season, kind of beginning, I guess still. Really pushing as far as like the food and stuff like that right now. Food and training. I've been training with my coach kind of, pretty often right now. I've been training with my buddy David actually, who just went pro earlier, about a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I would say. So he just turned pro, which is cool, right after me. So been training with him too, man. He's got a show coming up, so it's real cool to kind of push him and he pushes me. So that's a cool little, mentality we got going on for sure. So training's going really good. Strength's like big time on the rise, all that good stuff. Um, but as far as like shows for next year, we don't really have anything specifically picked out. We're still waiting for the schedules and stuff to come out, see what lines up with what. But we're looking to start prep if I've made the kind of improvements that I need. By that time, if my coaches gives the green light, we're looking to start prep probably late January, maybe February, if we can, if everything's kind of lined up, and then probably pick a show maybe June or July again, something like that. But the end goal, man, I mean, the end goal for sure, like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, it's to try to make it to the Olympia for sure, like in my rookie season. So, if I can win a show and qualify the Olympia, that would be like, you know, dream come true. That's the end goal. So, I'm not one of these people. You got a lot of people that do say, I'm gonna do my pro debut, whatever happens, happens. I'm gonna have fun with it. I just got to stand on the pro stage. It may sound a little harsh, but that's how I am with myself. If I'm gonna do something, like I want to go in and I want to be like, for people to be like, damn, who's this rookie? You know what I mean? Like I want to make a name and to make an impact like extremely fast and get to like basically the biggest stage in bodybuilding, fast as I can and try to climb up the ranks quick. So
That's awesome.
Definitely, yeah. Dylan, you got anything else for him?
No, I think we covered just about anything. It was great to hear your story and what you went through with your second show and how you battled back and what you faced mentally and how you pulled yourself out of it. So it's great content for our listeners, and we're happy to have you on.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
And Jay, do you have anything else that you want to cover? I feel like we're kind of up to speed, but obviously there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes and the little things. Any stories that you want to tell or anything like that?
No, I mean the only thing I would say that was crazy is especially this last show when I did win my pro card and ended up winning the show, was that I wasn't really even gonna do classic physique like what I'm doing now, that division. I've always even my first coach, he would see me and he'd be like, man, I'm gonna be honest with you, I think you're a little bit more classic guy than men's physique or any other division. And I was just like, yeah, no, I'll think about that later. So like it was crazy. I was about 12 weeks out at the time, 12 or 11, somewhere like that. And I went to go see my coach in person, and he's a classic physique pro. So I went to go pose with him, my men's physique posing, and he was just kind of like, you know what? And I've always had bigger legs. That's always been a big strong point as far as just from, I don't know if it's just genetically or just football, just sports training. As far as all you do is squat and bench, all the time. So I don't know if it's from that training, but I've always had very, very strong legs, just overall. So, I was doing my men's physique stuff, and he was like, you know what? He was like, let me put on some posing trunks. He's like, let's see how your classic stuff looks. So he showed me that, and like immediately, kind of when I started hitting poses, he was like, basically, he was like, F the trunks. He was like, throw them away. He's like, we're gonna go classic. He's like, classic physique's the division for you. So, and then that's when he kind of told me, and my coach doesn't really sugarcoat anything either. He's very upfront. If you look a little sloppy in your check-in and stuff like that too, he's gonna tell you, hey, you look a little chubby. He'll tell you straight up like, we need this, we need to improve on that, all that good stuff. So, he told me, he was like, you know what, we're gonna go in there your first, because I did have to qualify for nationals this year, because it's a year basis. So I did, first amateur show. He's like, we're gonna go in there, you're gonna win that show. He's like, then after that, we're gonna go to nationals 3 weeks later. He's like, you're not just gonna get your pro card. He's like, you're gonna win the whole show. And I was like, really? I was like, you think so? I was like, I'll just be happy getting a pro card, man. I don't know about winning the show. That's just how I am on me. I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, you don't know who shows up. You don't know what's gonna happen. So, me and my girlfriend, both of us are very like, it's not over till it's over type of people. So, I thought that was a pretty funny kind of story on as far as how this last prep went, just because I wasn't even supposed to do classic physique. I always thought about it like maybe we were gonna do both at the first show, and then I was gonna stick with men's physique because that's kind of what I knew. And then when we ended up winning that first show and getting a lot of feedback from judges and feedback, I ended up getting posted by the Bodybuilding Without Borders page, which is kind of like the ESPN social media page of bodybuilding. So that was like a huge thing to me, him kind of saying that, this guy's kind of like, the future. He has that classic shape, we got to look out for. So I was like, you know what, maybe classic is this, maybe classic is the division. Maybe I'll throw away the board trunks for sure. I'm not gonna save them no more. just to the skivvies now, man. just the little posing trunks.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I mean that's a great story. It really is. I guess we'll finish off with one last thing. Usually we ask our guests is one piece of advice, or a couple if you can't decide, but piece of advice for our listeners to kind of utilize on their own journey and ultimately push through those tough times, because everybody's going to go through those tough times. Like as you experienced, you had that with one of your shows, and I'm sure there's going to be more to come in the future. So one piece of advice, what would it be?
So for me, man, I mean, the biggest thing, whether it doesn't matter what sport it is, it can be applied to basically anything. Because I know you got a lot of broad variety of listeners out there as far as different sports and athletic backgrounds and stuff like that. So whether it's bodybuilding, hockey, football, whatever you want to do, I mean, there's no way around it, man. You gotta do it under like basically 110% every single day. There's always gonna be somebody out there, that may be working harder. So you gotta have that in the back of your head. That you don't want to miss a day, because there's always going to be somebody hungry waiting, that wants to take your spot, wants to take where you're at. That's the environment. That's the game. That's whatever you're playing, that's going to happen. So it's got to be 110% basically every single day, day in and day out. The days you don't want to do it, those are the days that when you get up and for me, the days I don't have motivation, the days I get up and go to the gym and finish that workout, those are the days when I kind of feel the best after that, because I knew I didn't want to be there, or I knew my head wasn't in it. Maybe I was having a shitty day, whatever it may be. And I went in there and, I finished it. I accomplished what I needed to do that day. That was my end goal. I needed to get in there, tear my body apart and kind of grow and do what I needed to. So those days that you don't feel like doing stuff, man, motivation's not always going to be there. That's just a fact of life. Days happen, life happens. But it's how you kind of connect, like it's kind of how you put yourself, through that situation. If you're not having that motivation, when you go in there and you let discipline take over and you let that kind of drive and that mental will and you have that mentality to push forward and then you go do it, that's what's going to take you to the top. That's where you're going to beat out everybody else. So I would say that's my biggest piece of advice for everybody is just, motivation's not always going to be there, but that discipline will. So let discipline kind of drive you and take you and make that kind of your forefront. And then from there, just, the sky's the limit as far as how far you can push yourself. And, to me, the end of the day, whoever's the most disciplined, that's the person that's going to win. So.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about this multiple times where like a lot of people fixate themselves on the end goal, and when they get anxious about the end goal, about achieving that end goal. But when you really just focus on, you break it down like freaking pieces of a pizza, right? Like to get the whole piece of pizza, you need all the individual slices, and it's the same thing with training. It's the same thing with business. It's the same thing with anything. Like you focus on those day-to-day tasks, you knock them out, you bang them out, and then boom, before you know it, you're reaching your end goal. So
Yeah, for sure.
but yeah, so so with that, I mean, we definitely want to have you on down the road, especially after maybe even the next show or something like that. We always like to have our guests back on down the road to kind of hear where their journey has ended up. And then another thing too, we have a ready to drink pre-workout / energy drink that we're actually coming out with. So this coming week. So it is the 18th today. So actually next Saturday, we're going down to Georgia for the production of this drink. So we'd love to send you some as a sample. Once
for
we,
sure,
once we get
man.
it and send it out to you for you to try. So I'm sure you use pre-workout and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, body. Come on, yeah. You say pre-workout, my eyes probably lit up. So yeah, I'll be down to try for sure, man. That's awesome though. So this is just gonna be put out pretty soon, or are you still kind of in the works of like testing everything?
Yeah, well, so yeah, we're ready to go now. Everything's down at the manufacturing facility in Georgia. Everything's made in the U.S., which is awesome. We love that, and yeah, so everything's there. Ingredients, cans. We did all the flavor testing. We did like 15 trials in June, and we've been working on this concept since, geez, I think last year at sometime. So, we've been working on this thing for a while now, getting the formula down perfectly for the athletes.
That's awesome. Yeah, you got me hyped to try it. So yeah, if you send some, I'll for sure
Yeah,
promote it,
yeah,
everything
no,
like
definitely.
that, man. So that's awesome.
Awesome. That sounds good. All right. Well, it was great having you on, and like I said, we're gonna have you on down the road. And good luck in these next couple of months. And
Thank you.
I will definitely keep in touch. I'm curious to hear where this is all going for sure.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate like the opportunity letting me be on here for sure. It's I've listened to some of y'all's podcasts before, coming on here, and they motivate the hell out of me no matter what, whatever sport it is. So, you know, like kudos to y'all for what y'all are doing. I appreciate it.
So that was a interesting interview. It's trying to think of a way to put this. Like he has something that like works for him. You know what I mean? Like, and he's done a really good job, it seems, of finding that balance between training, between recovery, and like trying to not to like walking that fine line, that balance of overtraining versus stepping off the gas a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, which as we know, it's a very freaking hard thing to do.
Yeah, and one thing I really like about interviewing the bodybuilders and listening to their stories because they are the ultimate disciplined athlete. Like, and that's what I love because that's what I apply to my sport. Even though it doesn't, guys get away with just going to the rink for 2 hours and doing your thing, but in bodybuilding, and that's what I respect so much about those guys, is there's no time off. Like, you are a 24-hour athlete, and everything you do, everything you put into your body directly affects the result. Where hockey players, okay, yeah, you can gain and lose, gain or lose 10 pounds,
Yeah.
lean out, get a little chubbier. I know some guys they'll be fat by the end of the season, like, which doesn't make
Yeah.
sense with how exhausting and physically demanding the hockey season is. Like, guys will put on body fat because that's how they treat their body, and you can't, or else you don't survive in bodybuilding. And that's why I love doing those interviews. Obviously, when we had Austin on earlier, it's such a dedicated and disciplined lifestyle, and it's cool to hear what they go through on a daily basis, and just the mental side of things. Again, I know we talk about that all the time, probably sound like broken records, but it's true. Like, what you deal with mentally when you don't have a time off, like when you're gearing up for a prep, however long it is, 4 or 5 months, you are dialed in, and it is nonstop. So it's cool to hear.
Yeah, and one thing you touched on a couple times too is, like, you're not always going to have motivation. You're not always going to be in that mode of, like, I'm ready to go. You know what I mean? Like, fired up and ready to roll. Like, you wake up, like, sometimes, man, like, you're going to wake up in the morning, you're going to feel like ass. Like, it's just not going to be it. You're just going to want to go back to sleep. But the way he talked about it, where it's just like the guys, and I mentioned it too, where it's like, it's almost like a battle of who's the better disciplinarian. You know what I mean? Like, who's going to get in their meals at the right time? Who's going to get in their training sessions, their conditioning and stuff like that? Like, that's ultimately it. Like, people see bodybuilding, you're just working out. Like, oh, you're just lifting weights. Like, big
You're
deal.
an egotistical, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much more involved with it. Like you said, like, I totally respect these guys, and Jay himself too for coming back too from. I'm assuming he seemed like he was very passionate about football, and it didn't seem to work out for him. And just to be able to keep searching for a passion that he's passionate about, and it seems like he's been able to find that at a young age. Like, he said, he would die for bodybuilding. Which is ultimately, like, what a lot of people struggle with is actually finding something that they love to the point of, like, I'm going to go through hell for this thing. Because ultimately, like discipline, like, discipline's really hard, but it's easier if you love it so much.
Yeah, 100%. When you're passionate about something, it's a lot easier to stick with it when you're not feeling motivated. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like we said in the episode too, like, we can't wait to get these in-person interviews in, because I think it's going to add value too for our listeners, because it's going to be more interaction and engagement, because you're in person, you're actually being humans and communicating with the person, not talking through a freaking screen. There's a huge aspect to that.
It's more personable. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, so we're excited for that. We're also excited to follow along on his journey as well. You can follow him at Jay Yount _ on Instagram. And he might have other platforms, but he just has his Instagram on here anyways. And you can follow us at underdog _ brand on our main platform, which is Instagram, but we're also on YouTube, TikTok, and then you can go to our website, www.udenergy.shop. And speaking of udenergy.shop, we're coming out with an energy drink, and it's formulated for the athlete. We didn't cut any corners with it. All the most beneficial ingredients that we possibly could, clinically dosed, not cutting any corners, not trying to make certain profit margins by, trimming the fat, as some companies would say, using 50% of what they should use to just make their profit margins. We made this product to really give you guys something special that you can turn to for on those days you might not have the motivation, right? Like, on those days where you're in class and you're a college athlete and you're freaking dying, listen to some professor give you some lecture / reading off a slide presentation, and you just can't wait to get to the gym, and you're ready to roll in about an hour. You're drinking that UD Energy in class and you're ready to roll. So we're excited to launch that, and we're counting down the days now. So this interview is done on the 18th, and we're going down there on the 24th. So, and then you guys will have access to it in early October. So stay tuned, follow along on our social media. Subscribe to our newsletter for more inside information on the release and our products, and And yeah, we thank you guys for listening to our podcast and this episode in particular. We're slowly growing our following, but we think that these stories really have value that you guys can benefit from, because this is people that we're interviewing that have been through the adversities, and it's almost like a source for you guys to be like, I'm not alone on this journey. You know what I mean? There's other people who are going through the same thing, if not worse. So just to always have that in the back of your mind, I think is very important. With that being said, thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.